Recording now. Alrighty, everybody, welcome to the LTA show. Happy 2022. I'm with a very special guest returning from last year. Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome. Before we get into the questions, just wanted to check in with you. How was your winter break and New Year's? Because last time we've done an episode was summer or
October?
I think it was
Maybe September?
maybe somewhere around like fall.
We can go back into the record.
We'll find out eventually.
Yeah.
But how have you been?
It's been pretty good. I can't complain. I think, October, September time frame.
Mm-hmm.
I was fresh into getting my pilot's license, and now I'm that many more months into it, and been going on some fun journeys with my friends, and just enjoying the California coast and all that fun stuff. And other than that, not too much. I'm not the most exciting person out there, so thanks for having me on here. But just aside from that, work and trying to squeeze in what little social life I have. So
I mean, I'd say you're pretty interesting because not many would fly a plane. Not many have even thought about it. So I mean, what you're doing is pretty remarkable. Compared to other people.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
No, like I said, no complaint. I've always wanted to be a pilot, and I wouldn't be able to do it without my family and my friends' support. But at the same time, I'm certainly feeling the economical impact of it, because we like to call it the most fun and expensive hobby. But it'll all be worth it. Maybe one day when I can actually get paid to fly, I'll start paying dividends. So.
I mean, for now, you're just getting the experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I know you've been talking a lot about it. When we had a class together at CSM, and then I think you briefly mentioned it, flight simulator, in the last podcast.
Got it all right there.
He's got the full setup, and it's really cool because it's pretty much exactly the same in real life, right? When you're flying, or is it a little different?
It's a little different. At minimum, I have what's called a HOTAS. If you're a sim nerd, this stands for hands-on throttle and stick, and it's supposed to be a replica of. I guess in that case, it's supposed to be. If you know what an A10 is, you play your video games. You see the big old airplane come in with a giant Gatling gun on the front.
Yeah.
That's an A10, and it shoots 30 millimeters of death out the front end. But that's what that HOTAS is modeled off of, and it's basically allows the pilot to, one, fly the airplane, but two, he's got all of his weapon systems and whatnot on the stick and throttle, so he doesn't have to in the middle of combat take off oh, I'll take my hand off the stick and I'll hit these buttons over here. And that's one less thing that one thing we learn is, even as basic private pilots, I'm obviously not military, but as a base pilot, the number one thing, fly the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Aviate, navigate, communicate. First thing is first, fly the airplane. And they try to drive that home with the HOTAS idea. But as far as the simulator itself, there's some weirdos out there that make their own cockpit and stuff. I wasn't really a fan of that, so I just got my HOTAS and then got a VR headset to where you can kind of get that visual immersion of, hey, I'm flying so-and-so, and oh look, I'm upside down, and that looks like a big airplane, whatever. It gets the job done. It's fun to do, but nothing compares to actually doing the real thing. So I don't know. Maybe one day we could do a podcast flying. That'd be interesting.
Hey, I might take you up on that offer. Honestly, that's a great idea.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of people. I could show you some videos out there. I got some friends that set up their own camera equipment, recording equipment, and it's possible. We'll just have to look into it.
I'm sure we'll figure it out, because I mean, we don't need the fancy mounts and all that. I can just hold the camera
Yeah,
as
you
we're doing
could.
it.
We can do anything,
Mhm.
right? It's 2022. Nothing's stopping us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we can like figure it out because, you know, I'm sure we'll just like somehow record it, your audio
Mm-hmm.
and my audio through the headset, and I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
find something.
No, you can. We can totally do that. So, soon to come. It'll happen.
Look out, everybody.
Look out.
We're gonna be flying and speaking, talking about an episode. We'll do two things at once.
And dodge another traffic. That's the dangerous part.
Well, I'm sure you'll be fine. I think you're pretty good. You've been training for it, and you've already done multiple flights already.
Yeah. For a private pilot, I'm not your United Airlines guy. Right now, I think I'm at like 160 hours, which it may seem like a lot. And sure, it's felt like a lot to me, but there's guys out there with 15,000 hours plus. There's guys that have, if you accumulate all the amount of hours they've been flying or in a cockpit, it is more than a year of their life flying, literally. So, and I know guys like that, and they're the most down-to-earth, humble people on earth, and you know, they try to mentor me and kind of show me the ropes, but just looking at how expensive that 160 hours has been for, you know, my family and I, 15,000 hours seems like quite a bit. So,
I mean, that's a lot. Like, how do you keep track of your hours? Is it like you put in a time card, or like as soon as you turn on the airplane?
So we have what's called a logbook, and there's people, you get a physical logbook to start with. That's kind of the way to do it, especially going through all your initial ratings. But if I wanted to, I haven't started one yet, I probably should. You get what's called an e-logbook, so you log so-and-so, I did what, 1.2 hours, and some of that was cross-country time, there was solo time, you could say how many landings you did, whether it was day or nighttime, and that's great and all if you have a physical copy, right? And that's helpful when you go to do your check rides, which is like the flying equivalent of doing like a driver's test, right? But let's say if you have an accident, like you lose it, or God forbid your house burns down, you got nothing to show for it. So that's why there's e-logbooks, which you just go into the computer and log everything, is becoming more mainstream. So, and that's how I'd hope those guys with 15,000 plus hours are doing it nowadays.
I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm sure other people can like vouch for them, right? Like, if you're higher up.
There's ways. I've known one person who, like I said, hope your house doesn't burn down. When he was little, his house burned down, and he lost his first couple hundred hours of flying, all gone. But nowadays, you can go to the FAA and say, "Hey, look, so and so tragedy happened to me. I don't have a log. Like, I physically don't have a logbook anymore, or I've lost it," and you can just say, I was roughly around this many hours, and I have this many ratings or endorsements, and they can come to an agreement like, all right, we'll start you off here. And hopefully by that point they invest into an e-logbook.
Hopefully. I mean, a lot of things are going online, so...
Yeah.
I mean, as you take your sip, take your sip, but I wanted to ask, you've done a couple flights. I've seen it on Instagram. They're really, really pretty, and you showed me like a photo of some of the flights you've done. You've done some with family and friends. Is there like a particular route you always go to, or do you like to like maybe travel on your own first and then see if they want to go that route, like, or is it like a specific routine that you always go and take them?
I think it depends on the passenger. My very first flight after my check ride back in August, it was the day after my check ride, I took my dad flying. I knew from the start my first passenger is going to be my dad, right? He's the one who kind of got me into flying when I was little, and I was just going to pay that back to him. And what are the odds? I take them up on a really crappy day. The winds were gusting at over 20 knots. It's like a 50-something degree crosswind, and the wind's just, I'm trying to land or take off, and the wind's just trying to push us off the runway. But we loved it. We just went, there's stuff called, you call it a practice area, or there's like a specific chunk of airspace or over a certain landmark where you can just practice your maneuvers and stuff. And for us, like Crystal Springs, like where our reservoir is over here, that whole stretch of land, like in that little valley there, that's one of our primary practice areas around here. So I just, took them up, did a stall or two, did some steep turns. Like, I mean, it's just a Cessna. It's not like a fighter jet or anything. It's like 2 Gs or whatever. 60-degree bank. And it reminded him of his days when he was, doing pilot training and whatnot back in the 80s. So it was a nice little moment, and then it was kind of short-lived because I was on a little bit of a budget. So we did it was like 30 minutes, but it fit the profile. If I want to show someone who's never been in an airplane before, like, especially because we have the luxury of living right next to San Francisco, we'll do something called a bay tour. And I can either go one of 3 ways to get to the bay. I can either go over 92 towards Half Moon Bay, and we can just ride up the coast to the Golden Gate and then enter the bay through that. Or we can go up the middle and kind of follow 101 and past San Francisco International and like Daly City and whatnot, and literally fly right over downtown San Francisco. Or the last way we can do it is we can go across the San Mateo Bridge towards Oakland International Airport, and then we can enter the bay from the east side. And either way, it takes like 10, at most 15, not even 15 minutes to get out there, and you just start doing your orbits and go, oh look, there's Alcatraz. Oh, see the Golden Gate Bridge? There's the skyscrapers. I have almost no hours compared to professional pilots, but I've done probably 10 something bay tours, and they don't get old for me. I love them.
I mean, that's great because, for somebody that's never flown in one, I'm sure it looks amazing seeing it.
Yeah.
Like up close, and like you can look both sides of the window and see like a full 180 instead of like an airplane where you only get like one.
You get the side only.
If you're lucky.
If you don't get the aisle or worse, the middle.
At the middle, you can't see anything from the middle side.
No one likes the middle. No, it's really special to be able to take everything in. And sure, it might be a little tiny airplane. It feels like you're in a car, and you only have just under 200 horsepower, and it's such a different experience. And if anyone has the opportunity to try it, I highly recommend. So we got to get you up there one day.
Yeah. Is it one of those where you sit in the front and someone sits on the back, or is it like you sit side by side?
We would be in a plane where we're side by side.
Okay.
There are plenty of aircraft out there where it's tandem like that, where you have one up front and one back. But the plane I fly would be side by side.
Yeah, I'm sure that'd be really cool. Like, I think it'd be a little nerve-wracking in the beginning because, you're like slowly getting up, and like you start seeing like how far you're going up.
Yep.
But I think once you get to that middle where like everything's steady,
yep,
I'm sure then like the tensions are gone. You're just like, wow, oh my gosh, I want to take a selfie.
I would. That's correct. I would say for the majority of people. Case in point, my mom was, deathly afraid of flying with me. It's like, oh, he's brand new newbie pilot, and this little lawnmower of an airplane only has 180 horsepower. There's a little bit of turbulence, I'm going to lose it, right? But no more than 10 seconds into flying, it's like, I look over, it's perfectly fine. And went on that bay tour, showed her all the stuff like I had mentioned, and luckily we picked a day with like no weather issues whatsoever. It was like flying on glass. It was great, but it's satisfying to see people, you know, who have all these, you know, preconceptions like, oh, what if this happens? What if that? It all goes away. You know, I'm not gonna say like, you know, nothing can happen, because, you know, it's real life, right? Anything can happen, but that's why we trained for it, and you just gotta prepare for it.
I mean, that's the same with like a car, you know, when you first drive, you're like, oh gosh, we're gonna be like scared, it's gonna get scary when we're going on like a highway or something.
Exactly.
Then it's like, eventually you just get so used to it, like, it's almost just second nature. You can just like,
Yep.
you can look at it and be like, okay, just make a turn. Not as
Yeah.
intense.
No, it does become a little more second nature, but there is that added element of like, okay, we're living on a completely different axis, right? Like it's not just left, right. You can also go, you know, up and down.
Mm-hmm.
That brings, and then several other factors. You have to have a little more situational awareness, but, you know, statistically, you have a higher chance of getting into a car accident than having an accident with an aircraft. And luckily, you know, especially because, for better or worse, we're around the San Francisco area with airspace, you know, super busy airspace around here. But for the most part, you know, I can elect to talk to so-and-so or air traffic controllers, and they can see me with their radar, and they can try to help me navigate around other planes and, you know, not have any conflicts with anyone. So it's a plus.
That's pretty cool. Do you like see any like birds as you're like flying? Like, are they just like right next to you?
I have seen my fair share of birds. That is a constant threat that we have to face at lower altitudes, is bird strikes.
Mm-hmm.
I have not hit a bird yet. I know a few people who have hit birds. Not gonna stop me from flying.
What would happen though in that case? Like, would you have to just go down lower altitude immediately? Like, what's the protocol for that?
After hitting a bird, or
It's
to
like,
avoid birds?
well, like once you hit a bird, because I'm trying to like, I don't know what I'm sure you would like panic at first. You're like, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I think everyone's natural reaction if they were to hit I mean, like I said, I haven't done it yet, so I don't want to speak for, you know, how people would react. I would probably personally be initially startled, like, holy shit, I just hit a bird. I can swear, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You could really, it's just the way you said it, and I just pictured like a scene where like you just flying, and I just like, what the heck?
Yeah, no,
Like,
I mean, on average, you know, we're flying at roughly, you know, plus or minus 10 miles an hour, around 100 miles an hour. So we're slightly faster than you'd go on like a freeway, at least in like a little Cessna. Hitting a bird at that speed would still do a little bit of it'd bang the airplane a little bit. I don't think it would compromise the airplane unless it got sucked into the engine somehow, or the air intake, that would give us some bad engine problems. Other worst case scenarios, if God forbid it somehow got through the glass of the canopy. Well, I guess technically it's not a canopy, but if it went through the glass of the windshield, then it'd probably get pretty loud in the airplane. Other than that, my first flight instructor actually told me he had a bird strike on his landing gear, and lucky it hit there because it did effectively nothing. He just felt a bump, and then, oh, what was that? Landed the airplane, there's a big blood splatter on the gear. It's like, I guess we hit a bird. But I'm sure, have you heard of Sullys Landing on the Hudson before?
Was it the one when like a bird went into the engine and like it took out one side of it, so you had to, the plan was to go into the water.
Yeah.
It was like, it made it in the news, right? Like it was like there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was like a airplane, like airport or whatever airline.
It was
like a big one.
It was big news at the time. So it was in January of 2009. Sully Sullenberger is a seasoned airline pilot, ex-military pilot. You know, taking off in the morning out of LaGuardia, and it's biting cold outside. I've never been to New York in the winter. It gets pretty cold over there. He didn't lose not just one, but he lost both of his engines because they hit a flock of geese, and those are a little bit bigger than the birds we even see around here, and they have much bigger engines. But that just goes to show you, like, you hit your engine in the wrong spot, you're in trouble. He reacted properly, and he assessed the situation as the pilot in command said, "Hey, look, I'm not gonna make if you have engine problem after takeoff, like, if you can, you want to make it back to an airport. If you can't, you have to find what's the next best place to land." What he chose was the Hudson River, right on the side of Manhattan. Knowing how cold it is and knowing the odds of surviving a water landing, he was able to put it in the water, and all 155 people lived that were on that airplane. This goes to show you the right amount of planning and kind of controlling your emotions in a bad situation like that. It's life and death. So.
Yeah, I mean, like, that is a little traumatizing, but, like, really glad, like, people can look at that and then, like, remember, like, anything could happen, and just trying to, like, assess where you're at, especially, like, the location when you're flying.
Yeah.
And in line, like, any safety precaution.
Yep. And again, going back to the base private pilot level is, you have to, at some point in your training, train for emergencies. I'm not going to say it's every emergency in the book, but they definitely cover, what happens when you lose your engine, what happens if you have a fire, outside the airplane, what happens if you have a fire inside the airplane. What are you going to do to help, mitigate the problem and, enhance the safety of the situation. And I was really bad at it to begin with, but before they sign you off to do anything, they drill that into you to where they are confident, like, okay, it's at least gonna have a chance. So a lot of hours and money went into that.
I mean, it's always, because, like, flying's a little different than driving a car, different circumstances and situations and factors, and, just, like, they just want you to be safe out there. Let's see, we got 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Anything you wanna keep going, or any thoughts,
What do you got for me? What do you want to squeeze in for 5 minutes?
Let's see.
Of course, I can go longer if you want.
What's the farthest you've flown?
Farthest I've flown? That would probably be Fresno, when I went to go do my check ride. I was going to say Placerville, but I think Fresno is a little bit longer. Day of my check ride, like I was saying, it's kind of like your driver's test equivalent to flying when you meet with the instructor. It's like, oh, can you parallel park? Can you follow the speed limit? In our cases, can you do a stall? Can you do a steep turn? Can you show us your emergency procedures? Do S-turns? Can you do turning stalls? Whatever. They do all that. My examiner was an old Vietnam veteran who flew helicopters in Vietnam. Old 70-something-year-old. The first thing to your check ride is you do your knowledge, you do the ground portion. And that's basically like him to make sure, like, okay, this guy on an academic level is competent enough to, fit this rating that he's going for, which was in my case, private pilot, so bare minimum. It's like, all right, you passed the ground part. All right, let's go fly. And it just so happened that was when all the fires were going on last year. Luckily, they weren't as bad as the previous year, but there's still quite a bit of smoke. We had 4 miles visibility with haze, and if you went up to about 3,000 feet or so, the smoke layer was so thick it was basically like flying through a cloud. So actually everything you do at the private pilot level is looking outside the airplane. You have instruments, and yes, you use them, but as far as the primary means of navigating the airplane, you're looking outside. So to be able to do that in a test environment with all the stress and whatnot involved, with limited visibility, it quite interesting. I was actually kind of surprised he was kind of on board to go fly that day, but I somehow passed, and I remember I was spending a lot of money that day with the amount of time it took to get down there, pay my instructor, pay the examiner, and be able to come back home and call myself a pilot that day. It was quite interesting.
Dang, beat all odds and all the pressure tests on there.
Oh yeah, I was nervous, but I guess that was the plus to going back to your original question was what's my longest flight? Yeah, I mean, I'm not even gonna try to ballpark how many miles that was, but we're going, I don't know, on average like 115, 120 miles an hour, and it took us about an hour and 20 minutes to get there.
Wow.
And back. So
Wow.
still better than driving a car, but
That is true. Yeah, because you don't really have any traffic.
yeah.
Let's see. Do you plan on flying anywhere farther than Fresno, or do you plan on getting to another higher up level, or what's your plan for this year with flying?
Plan for this year, get my high performance rating, which means that I can fly any aircraft with more than 200 horsepower. All the aircraft I've flown is less than 200 horsepower, otherwise you need that endorsement for high performance. So that's one thing. And then the other big thing this year is going to be, which I'm hopefully starting in the next couple weeks, is my instrument rating, which I brought up at the private pilot level is your primary means of navigation is looking outside the airplane. For instrument, it's the complete opposite. Just like in the name, you're using all of your instruments on the inside of the aircraft. Okay, I'm not in a 45-degree dive, heading towards a mountain. I'm confident that I can fly the airplane without any visual references outside. And it also allows you to do flights in certain weather conditions, because as a private pilot, I can't even touch a cloud. Legally, I cannot fly into a cloud yet. So as soon as I get my instrument rating, I can do that.
Okay.
So that's the goal for this year.
Nice. Well, I think what are we at? With 1 minute left, yeah, I need to close it out. I always have my guests do it. So, any final thoughts? Any things you want to say?
Probably need a couple seconds for any random thoughts to come. Thanks for having me on again. I know all we did today was 20 questions, but next time what we did last time? We got pizza, right?
Last time it was pizza, and then I think we did 21 questions actually the last episode.
Yeah.
Last one.
I think we closed it out with that. Always a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to see you. Maybe next time we do a podcast flying, since I always spent this 21 questions mostly talking about that. But yeah, I think it'd be a pretty cool experience. I'd love to share it with you.
It was always a pleasure to have you on this show. We will make that work. I think we can.
We're gonna make it work.
We're gonna make it work, and then